The road stretched endlessly through the countryside, shrouded in a thick rolling fog that clung to the trees like ghostly fingers. Elias walked alone, the sound of his boots crunching over damp gravel, the only rhythm in the still night. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the mist itself were trying to slow him, to make him pause and reconsider this journey. But he pressed forward, drawn by something he could not name, something both magnetic and unsettling. In the distance, the manor appeared. Its silhouette loomed against the pale wash of the moonlight, partially obscured by ivy that had claimed the stone walls over decades. The windows, dark and hollow, seemed to stare at him like empty eyes, reflecting a faint glow of the moon in shards where the glass was cracked. A low wind whispered through the broken battlements, carrying the faint, earthy scent of rain-soaked stone and moss. Elias slowed at the gate. The wrought iron swing groaned as he pushed it open, the sound echoing unnaturally across the courtyard. His fingers lingered on the cold metal for a moment, feeling the chill seep through his coat, as if the manor itself were testing him. He inhaled sharply, the damp air filling his lungs, sharp and sweet with the smell of wet earth. Stepping across the courtyard, Elias felt the crunch of frost-hardened gravel under his boots. Shadows from the skeletal trees twisted and stretched unnaturally in the fog, their branches swaying gently, though the wind was faint. A loose shutter banged against the side of the manor, a hollow, hollowing sound that seemed to echo from far away, like the manor exhaling. At the entrance, the heavy oak door loomed before him. Its surface was rough, splintered in places, and covered in the faint etching of long-forgotten hands. Elias pressed the handle. The lock gave way with a reluctant click. The door swung inward slowly, its hinges groaning as though protesting his intrusion. The foyer was vast, shrouded in shadows that pooled into corners and crept along the walls like liquid. Dust hung thick in the air, motes catching the pale moonlight like tiny frozen stars. Elias set his suitcase down with a soft thud. Every movement echoed through the hall, bouncing off the marble and stone in strange, disorienting ways. The air was cold, unnaturally so, making him shiver. Despite the thick coat he wore, he let his eyes wander over the interior. Grand, ornate mirrors lined the walls, their surfaces tarnished and streaked with age. Candle sconces clung to the stone, some empty, some holding waxed stubs that had long since burned down. The floorboards beneath his feet groaned in protest with every step, stretching the silence even further. Then it happened. A sharp, inexplicable chill slid over him, like icy fingers tracing the nape of his neck. Elias froze, breath shallow, his eyes scanning the shadows. A movement flickered just beyond the top of the staircase. A silhouette, tall and still, watching. He blinked, and it was gone. The stairs were empty, bathed only in the weak moonlight spilling through the cracked windows. And yet, the sensation of being watched did not fade. It pressed against him, gentle but insistent, like a soft weight on his chest. Elias swallowed hard, trying to force his nerves into calm. "It's nothing," he whispered to himself, though the words sounded fragile, swallowed almost immediately by the cavernous hall. He shook his head, stepping further in. Each echo of his boots against the stone floor seemed to stretch longer than it should. as if the manor were elongating time itself. Dust stirred under his feet, brushing against his ankles like faint, cold tendrils. Faint drafts drifted through the cracked windows, carrying whispers of a language long forgotten, or perhaps only imagined. The faint rustle of curtains seemed almost deliberate, and shadows in the corners shifted as though aware of him, tracking his movement. Elias explored cautiously, moving toward a staircase at the center of the hall. The railing was smooth but icy to the touch. Step by careful step, he ascended, listening to the groan of the wood beneath him, every creak reverberating like a heartbeat. At the top, a long corridor stretched ahead, lined with doors, closed tight, each whispering the faintest promise of mystery. And then, a movement, subtle, almost imperceptible, in the corner of his vision. A shadow against the far wall, just beyond the reach of the candlelight he carried. He turned slowly, and the corridor was empty. The cold lingered. The sense of a presence, distant yet watching, enveloped him. Elias exhaled slowly, forcing his fingers to unclench around the candle. His heart pounded quietly, a steady drum in the silence. He moved on deeper into the manor, his mind both wary and drawn forward. The manor waited, patient, watching. Elias moved down the long corridor at the top of the stairs, the candlelight trembling in his hand. Each door he passed was closed, some warped with age, their brass handles dulled with tarnish. The air was colder here than in the foyer, and the faint smell of old wood and dust hung heavy. His footsteps echoed softly, but sometimes it felt as if the echoes were not entirely his own, like the manor was subtly mirroring his movements. He reached the first door on the left, a study. The door was slightly ajar, a thin line of darkness spilling into the hall. Elias pushed it slowly. Inside, bookshelves climbed toward the ceiling, their spines faded, their pages yellowed with age. Dust lay thick on the floor, disturbed only by the faint impression of footprints that did not match his own. A sudden cold draft swept across the room, extinguishing the candle for a brief moment. Elias's breath fogged in the air, and then, from the corner of his eye, he saw it. A figure, distant, still. The shape was tall, slender, and impossibly calm, standing perfectly straight, facing him, yet not moving a muscle. When he turned fully, nothing remained. Just the quiet, just the cold. He swallowed, forcing himself to stay. "Hello?" His voice sounded small and uncertain. The room answered only with silence and the soft groan of the settling building. Yet he could feel it, the presence of someone or something watching him, always just out of reach. Shaking, Elias moved deeper into the study. A large desk sat against the far wall, cluttered with papers, broken quills, and a tarnished ink pot. Something about the desk drew him closer, as though it contained secrets the manor had kept hidden for decades. He opened a drawer cautiously. Inside, he found old letters, yellowed with age, penned in a precise, deliberate hand. Each one spoke of loneliness, longing, and a presence that never spoke, but always observed. He paused, holding a letter up to the faint light. A shadow moved across the room, subtle, fluid, impossible to pin down. He spun around, empty. Yet the cold remained, the quiet quiet weight pressing against him like a reminder he was not alone. Elias moved from the study into a smaller adjoining room, a parlor. Faded furniture lined the walls, dust-coated curtains hung heavy, and a grand fireplace stood, cold and dark. He approached the hearth and ran his hand over the mantel, tracing the grooves and carvings. A sudden chill made him pull back. The room's temperature had dropped several degrees in an instant. He sensed the presence again, nearer this time. It didn't move. It didn't speak. But it was there. A shadow in the corner, at the far edge of the room. Always watching, always patient. Elias's heart pounded quietly, a steady rhythm, but he felt no panic. Instead, a strange curiosity rose inside him, mingled with a subtle, almost unexplainable comfort. The presence was cold, yes, but not threatening. Observant, yes, but not cruel. He stepped toward the window, the fog outside curling against the glass like slow-moving waves. When he glanced back, he thought he saw the figure again, just a flicker, just a ripple in the shadows. He turned fully gone. But the feeling remained. Watching, always watching. Elias exhaled slowly, letting the chill brush past him as he lit the candle again. He decided to explore further. The manor's corridors stretched endlessly, winding like the passages of memory itself, each room a capsule of time and shadow. And somewhere in those shadows, the silent observer lingered, a cold, distant presence that both unnerved him and drew him forward, compelling him to uncover its story. The night deepened. Outside, the fog thickened, curling around the manor like a protective shroud. The wind whispered softly through the broken windows, carrying a faint, haunting melody. Or perhaps it was only the building's groaning responding to his presence. Elias moved quietly, deliberately, sensing the cold gaze follow him, step by step, room by room, corridor by corridor. He paused at the end of the hallway, feeling the weight of the manor's silence pressing in from all sides. And in that silence he realized something strange. He did not feel alone, and yet he was not truly together with anyone. The ghost did not speak, did not move close. It simply was. A presence, patient, cold, watching. And Elias, for reasons he could not name, did not recoil. The manor had begun to claim him, not in fear, but in fascination. And he knew, as he turned another corner, that this night was only the beginning. The next morning, or perhaps it was the middle of the night, time seemed uncertain in Hollow Manor. Elias awoke to the faint glow of gray light filtering through a cracked window. He sat up in the dust-laden bed, stretching slowly, listening. The manor was quiet, but not silent. Faint groans of settling wood, the whisper of wind through broken shutters, and somewhere far off, the soft drip of water. He rose, feeling a pull toward the corridors again. Something about this place compelled him to walk its halls, to explore, to understand. Each step seemed deliberate, each creak of the floorboards, a conversation he could not quite hear. As he moved through the grand hallway, Elias began noticing subtle patterns. Candles that had been extinguished the night before were now lit, tiny flames flickering softly as if placed by unseen hands. Books on shelves were shifted ever so slightly, open to pages he had not touched. Footsteps he could almost feel behind him, matched his own rhythm, though no one was there. At first, he thought it was imagination. Perhaps the manor was simply old, strange, bending reality in quiet ways. But then he realized the patterns were too deliberate. The coldness that accompanied these signs was precise, controlled. The presence, the figure he had glimpsed in the shadows, was aware, observing, responding. He paused in the library, running a hand along the spines of books, feeling the cold seep through the wood. And there, in the corner of the room, just beyond the candlelight, he saw it again. The tall, still figure, silent and distant. It did not approach, it did not move, it did not speak, and yet Elias felt an unspoken communication, a recognition that transcended words. He swallowed, his heartbeat quiet in the cold air. I see you, he whispered, his voice soft, almost lost in the shadows. The figure did not respond, but for a moment the temperature shifted slightly, warmer in the air around him, as though the ghost acknowledged his words in silence. Elias's curiosity deepened. He began to leave small signs for the presence, subtle gestures. A book opened to a page he thought might interest it, a candle placed where it could be seen, a note with his own quiet words. Days, or maybe nights, it was hard to tell, passed in this manner. Elias learned to move carefully through the manor, anticipating where the presence might be, noticing small reactions. A shadow lengthening, a candle flickering in a particular pattern, a subtle chill that seemed to recede when he lingered. Slowly, a bond began to form, wordless and fragile, rooted in recognition and curiosity rather than warmth or teasing. Elias began to understand something essential. The ghost was not cruel. It was distant, yes, cold, yes, but not malevolent. It observed, it tested, it waited, and he, in turn, felt an unusual sense of calm in its presence. There was no fear here anymore, only a careful fascination, a quiet companionship that grew in silence. That night, Elias sat by the fireplace in the parlor, candlelight flickering across the worn furniture. Shadows danced on the walls, stretching and curling, and he felt again that quiet gaze from across the room. He did not move. He did not speak. He simply sat, breathing slowly, letting the cold presence of the ghost fill the room alongside him. The manor had begun to feel alive, not in terror, but in quiet observation. And in that quiet, Elias discovered a strange comfort. He was not alone, and yet he was never touched, never spoken to, never even seen clearly. The ghost remained cold, distant, a sentinel of shadows, but it had chosen him in its own enigmatic way. And Elias knew, as the candle flickered low and the wind whispered through the broken windows, that this bond, fragile, distant, wordless, was the beginning of something neither of them could yet name. The manor had settled into a rhythm now. Elias moved through its halls with quiet confidence, every creak and sigh of the old wood familiar. Yet the presence of the ghost lingered constantly at the edge of his awareness. Not close, not warm, not cruel, simply there, watching, always watching. One evening, Elias ventured into the attic, a place he'd avoided before. The air was colder here, thick with the scent of old wood and dust. Sunlight no longer touched these beams. Only the moonlight seeped through small cracks in the roof. Boxes of belongings, long forgotten, were stacked haphazardly along the walls, their contents spilling onto the floor in careful disarray. Elias picked up an old journal, its leather cover cracked and soft with age. He opened it, and the words inside spoke to a time long past, a time when the manor was alive with laughter, with footsteps, with voices that no longer existed. Each entry detailed a life cut short, a loneliness preserved, and the lingering presence of someone who could not leave. As he read, he felt a shift in the air, a soft draft, colder than any he had felt before, brushed across the pages. And then, in the corner of the attic, he saw it again, the tall figure, still and silent, its outline blurred in the shadow. The ghost did not move, it did not speak. Yet Elias felt its gaze resting on him, heavy but not oppressive. He continued reading softly, aloud at times, as if the words themselves could bridge the distance between them. Occasionally, the pages would shift slightly under his hand as though the presence was guiding him, testing him, acknowledging him without a single word. Hours passed like this, though Elias lost all sense of time. The storm outside began, rain hammering gently against the roof, wind rattling the shutters. He didn't notice the cold so much anymore. Instead, a strange warmth settled over him, a calm acceptance of the ghost's presence. By night's end, Elias had uncovered fragments of the ghost's past, a life marked by isolation, by longing, by choices that left him bound to the manor. And though the ghost remained distant, cold, and untouchable, a quiet connection had been forged. Recognition, understanding, two souls, separate yet intertwined in the silent hours of the night. Elias left the attic carrying the journal close to his chest. As he descended the stairs, the wind whispered through the halls. He paused at the parlor doorway and saw the figure once more, closer now, not warm, not inviting, but undeniably present. For the first time, Elias spoke without hesitation. "I understand," he said softly. "I see you." The presence did not shift, did not move, and yet Elias felt it, an acknowledgement, not of warmth, but of quiet acceptance. They were no longer simply two beings occupying the same space. They were participants in a shared existence bound by observation, by attention, by subtle recognition. That night, Elias lay in bed, listening to the storm outside, feeling the gentle, cold watchfulness that had become a constant companion. He drifted into sleep, not with fear, but with a calm understanding. The manor and its silent inhabitant had become part of his world. And in the shadows, the ghost remained, distant yet attentive, patient and eternal, waiting, watching. The manor had settled into silence again, the storm long past. Outside, the fog clung to the trees and rolled lazily over the courtyard. Inside, everything felt still, as though the house itself were holding its breath. Elias moved carefully through the halls, now familiar with every creak, every shadow, every whisper of the wind through broken windows. He entered the parlor where the fireplace lay cold, the ashes gray and soft. A single candle flickered on the mantel, its glow reflecting across the worn furniture. And there, in the far corner, the figure stood. Not menacing, not teasing, not warm, simply present, watching, patient, eternal. Elias approached slowly, leaving the journal from the attic on the table. He placed a hand gently on its cover, as if offering it to the presence without expectation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, a faint shimmer brushed the edge of the candlelight. A movement too subtle for the eyes, but undeniable to the senses. He sat in the parlor, letting the silence stretch. Outside, the wind whispered softly through the manor, brushing against the windows and rattling the loose shutters. He could feel the ghost's presence nearby, cold yet steady, an anchor in the quiet. There were no words. There never would be. And yet, he felt something profound. Acknowledgement, trust, recognition. Elias reached for the fireplace, dragging a log from the pile. He lit it slowly, the flames flickering and casting long, wavering shadows across the room. The warmth spread gradually, soft and gentle, reaching even the corners where the cold presence lingered. For the first time, he imagined the ghost, noticing the warmth, perhaps even accepting it, even if only in its distant, cold way. Hours passed like moments. The candle burned low. The moonlight shifted across the walls. Elias spoke quietly, sometimes to himself, sometimes to the shadows, reading poetry aloud, recounting memories, describing the world outside the manor. And the ghost remained, always watching, never moving closer, never speaking. Yet a connection had formed, subtle and unspoken. It was not warmth or companionship in the conventional sense. It was presence, recognition, quiet coexistence. Elias felt it in the shift of air, the subtle movements of shadows, the faint chill that receded when he lingered in a room. Finally, he lay down in his bed, the candlelight casting soft glows across the room. The manor was calm, the storm outside a distant memory. And though the ghost did not speak, did not touch, did not come closer, Elias felt the silent acknowledgement, a bond forged in shadows, patience, and quiet observation. As sleep claimed him, the house held its breath. Outside, the fog curled and twisted around the trees. Inside, the shadows danced softly along the walls, a silent sentinel in the night. And somewhere in the cold corners of Hollow Manor, the ghost waited and watched. Not menacing, not teasing, just present, just patient, just eternal. Elias drifted deeper into sleep, calm, accepted, and gently cocooned in the quiet rhythm of the manor. And in that rhythm the shadows whispered they were no longer alone.